Well, hey, y'all. It is so good to be with you today. I may be a new face for those of you who are visiting for the first time this morning. And I may seem like a new face to the rest of you because it has been a minute. As many of you know, I began serving as UUCA's community minister in March of 2020. Right before the pandemic, literally the week before the pandemic hit here. In our Unitarian Universalist movement, community ministry is defined as care for the world outside of the walls of the local congregation. I cared for the world outside of the walls of this congregation for my first 3 years here in Atlanta as an oncology chaplain at Emory's Winship Cancer Institute, and then as a pediatric chaplain at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. We talked about that work as an extension of the ministry of UUCA. And I believe that the care that each of us provides the world and the work that each of us does to build the beautiful city, whether it is through our professional or volunteer or personal labor, is an extension of the ministry of this congregation, is it not? Now, you may or you may not remember that from 2021 to 2022, I spent a year working with you directly, working closely with the pastoral care team, teaching and preaching regularly. This may have given some of you a taste of what it is like to have a second minister in a congregation this size. It feels pretty good, right? So remember that feeling when you were asked to participate in the ongoing campaign to bring on a second minister here, because a community minister and a second full-time congregational minister are not the same thing. Not even close. Because what happened next? In the fall of 2022, I pretty much disappeared. Not for lack of love, I assure you. Let me tell you what happened. Last August, I started a new position as the chaplain and chair of religious studies at Woodward Academy in College Park. I now serve as chaplain to over 2,600 students in pre-K through 12th grade, as well as 650 faculty and staff. I teach a world religions class to high school seniors, and I am responsible for interfaith awareness and education throughout the academy, as well as supporting our social, ethical, and emotional learning initiatives. At home, I am partner to Anthony, who you met this morning, and mom to my daughters, one of whom joined us earlier. The other is at home with her grandmother. Hello. Arden, who will turn 10 this fall, and Sora, who I was pregnant with when we started here, is unbelievably 3 years old and starting preschool. As a family, we are members of 3 different school communities, yes, with 3 different school calendars. And I share all of this with you to give you some context for what I want to talk about with you this morning. I want to invite us to think together about what it means to, as the poet says, make our daily life our temple and our religion, to enter into it with our all and to find the divine in unexpected places. And it's back to school week here in Atlanta. So as we enter this new school year, I want to share with you my experience of the past year teaching and learning about religion and religions with young people. How does that sound? Sound okay? Well, let's start with the very basics. It took me about a year to learn the schedule. At Woodward, we have 7 periods total, 5 each day over the course of 7 rotating days. So I eventually gave up, and I took to saying to my students, not I'll see you tomorrow, but I'll see you when I see you, so that I could save face, because I could not for the life of me hold in my head which of the 3 sections of religion class I was teaching would in fact meet the next day, or whether it would be a day 5 or a day 3 or a day 7, or sometimes which way was up. After my first day of teaching last August in my 11th year of ordained ministry, I called my mother, who has been a history professor for over 40 years. I had no idea, I told her. And then I said, teachers should be paid $1 million a year. Bless you, teachers. I have done a lot of things in my career. I have pastored churches. I have sat at the bedsides of the dying. I have baptized babies as they took their final breaths. I have done some hard things, and teaching is hands down one of the hardest things that I have ever done. Those of you who have been first-year teachers know the truth of this statement. Most days in my first year, I just tried to keep up. It was a good day if the students were engaged in the activity I had planned. And it was a great day if something in my lecture caught at least one person's eye and put a spark in it. But sometimes I got to go to church on Tuesday afternoons. Picture us there, after lunch, pizza or chicken tenders sitting heavy in teenage bellies, the afternoon sun streaming in our classroom windows. Usually I had my eye on at least one kid who was trying desperately to stay awake. And then I would notice the 17-year-old on the other side of the room. I'd watch them take something in. I'd watch it whirl around in their mind, and then I got to see that moment where something shifted for them. I got to watch as something changed the way they saw the world, or people they thought were different from them, or how they saw themselves, or ultimate reality. I get choked up just thinking about it. Do you know that moment? Some of you are nodding. You know that moment. I invite you to think back to the first time, or maybe the last time, that something shifted in the way you saw the world, or people who you thought were different from you, or yourself, or ultimate reality. What was it that made that shift? Where did it happen? Who were you with? What did it feel like in your body? For my students last year, sometimes what struck them so powerfully was hearing that the Buddha had some of the same questions about life that they did. Or that Chief Seattle understood the rivers of the land as the blood of his ancestors. Other days, it was the revelation for some that Jesus of Nazareth was himself Jewish. And still others, it was the idea that the Hindu concept of ultimate reality is known both as Brahman, all that was, all that is, and all that will be, and Atman, the individual soul, and the fact that these concepts are interchangeable. Let me say that again. In Indian philosophy, the concept of ultimate reality is known as both Brahman, all that was, all that is, and all that will be, all of reality, and Atman, the individual soul. And these concepts are interchangeable. So in Indian philosophy, each of us is considered all that there was, all that there is, and all that there will be. And that's enough to burst through a post-lunch food coma, I think. And I say I got to go to church on these afternoons because every once in a while, even though I have an academic, not a devotional classroom, the same thing would happen for me in what I began to think of as the sanctuary of my classroom, as happens for me at church on Sunday morning. It's that experience of watching a window open and wings beat through space. It's that experience of insight and revelation and wonder. It's that surrender to the ineffable, that zoom in, zoom out moment when we realize how small we all are, and yet how powerfully connected we are to the infinite. When we remember that we, sitting here with the most powerful computers in our pockets, are but a heartbeat away from our cave-dwelling ancestor who looked up at a sky full of more stars than we can possibly imagine and wondered, how did this all come to be? What could it all mean? And who the hell am I? Where does that happen for you? What do you do when it does happen? And I ask that because sometimes these moments stop me in my tracks and goosebumps cover my skin and I take a sharp breath in and I wonder sometimes what my students might think when this happens. I wonder if they notice at all and understand that the truth is they probably do not. And I've given up searching for alternative names or explanations for what's happening because for me at this point, it's just God. It's a God moment. Now, I wouldn't have said that as a Unitarian Universalist child or a teenager or even as a young adult. And believe me when I tell you that is a long story. We don't have time for it. I'm not going to take you through it now. But suffice it to say, my path to ministry, to religious life, and yes, to God has been a continuous journey of resistance and surrender. And so I find myself in this new chapter, one in which I am responsible for providing spiritual grounding for a religiously diverse, non-sectarian school community, and for stewarding high schoolers' academic exploration of religion and religious life. How does one even begin to undertake such tasks? Well, we start with the basics once again. What do we mean by religion? I tell my students that the definition of religion depends on who you ask, and that some scholars argue that even the act of attempting to define religion as religion is in of itself a colonial enterprise rooted in oppression. Dr. Megan Goodwin of Northeastern University, co-host of the podcast Keeping It 101, A Killjoy's Introduction to Religion, has been one of my teachers in this school of thought. And she and her co-host, Dr. Elise Morgenstein First of the University of Vermont, define religion not as belief, not as interpretation of sacred texts, not solely membership in a community or adherence to particular tenets or practices. Rather, they define religion as what people do. They say this: religion is what people do, one, because religion is about more than just belief. Religion is about what happens out in the world, how people shape their lives based on communities of accountability and responsibility and belonging and meaning-making. End quote. You all know something about that. Religion is what people do on good days. And religion is what people do on the days when we are just trying to keep up. And on the days it don't come easy. Religion is about being in community with people who will drive out and find us. And sometimes it's about being the one who does the finding. Religion is about asking and answering the most basic of human questions. They may be basic, but they are huge. Religion is asking and answering the biggest questions of human life in community with other humans. It is hard to be a human being. Amen. It is hard to be a human adult, and it is harder still to be a human teenager. Over the past year, I have become increasingly aware of the sensitivity with which it is necessary to approach life's big questions in my class. I understand that many students are asking themselves on a daily basis, why are we here? Not just here, but here. What does all this mean? And who the hell am I? Many of them have found answers in religion, be it Judaism or Christianity, Islam or Hinduism. Some of them tell me they've settled on science over religion, logic, they say, over spirituality. Some are still searching. My job is not for a moment to tear down any of the foundations that my students have begun to build for themselves during these early years of their lives. My work is to show them that there are many ways to build the foundations of a spiritual life. That the designs of the religious houses we construct might be different, but the goals are the same. A roof over our heads, strong walls to hold it up, and a foundation that provides us not only shelter, but comfort and security, hope in the midst of the inevitable winds of life. Rebecca Parker writes in her book, A House for Hope, the sheltering walls of churches and synagogues and sanghas and mosques offer us a way of living that finds joy and meaning in each other, in simple ways of being, in slowing down, and in giving time to the things that matter most. They enable us, she says, to create a good life together, a community of resistance, a covenant of joyful interdependence that will support us through the radical changes needed in our society as we embrace the calling to live peacefully and sustainably on the earth. I too believe that spiritual homes like these, whether they be the literal walls of our congregations or the metaphorical walls of our strong, resilient spiritual selves, are crucial for being a human being in this world at all times, but perhaps especially now. My foray into the classroom, into the exploration of how people do religion in myriad ways around the globe, has reminded me of this powerful truth. It has also reminded me of a truth that as Unitarian Universalists, I think we sometimes forget. We do not have to do it all alone. We can tenderly, carefully, highly respectfully glean from the distilled wisdom of the world's traditions, forge what we discover in the fire of our own experience, and see what treasures are revealed. The Hindu god Shiva is known as the destroyer, but he does not only tear down, he destroys for the sake of a new creation. Dr. Heinrich Ziemer was a German student of Indian philosophy and translator of that philosophy to the West, and he wrote this of Shiva's dance. His gesture, wild and full of grace, precipitates the cosmic illusion. His flying arms and legs are the swaying of his torso produce, indeed they are, the continuous creation, destruction of the universe. Death exactly balancing birth. Annihilation, the end of every coming forth. Hindus call the cycle of birth and life and death and rebirth samsara. And the understanding is that we are each on this never-ending wheel of creation and destruction until we reach enlightenment. And what is required in order to do so? To understand finally, truly, deeply, and completely the truth that we are all ultimate reality. That our individual soul, the Atman, is one and the same as Brahman. To know without a doubt that we are all connected, that we are each and all that there was, all that there is, and all that there will be. There is no end to the Tuesday afternoon or Sunday morning aha moments required to reach that kind of understanding. But when our daily life becomes our temple and our religion, when we offer our all in as many moments as we can muster, when we live with wonder and surprise ever springing in the soul, whatever it is that we are doing, I believe we are on our way. And perhaps the treasure that we seek is in our own ovens, after all.